everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Stargirl Season 1, Episode 6. It's called The Justice Society, so full spoilers for the episode, as always. This episode actually saw the team, even though there was a bit of turmoil earlier on, because Courtney was tasked with Pat having found all the GSA stuff that was left in her closet, demanded it all be brought back in, but despite her best efforts to kind of try and do that, ultimately ended up in a sort of their first mission where they you know, the goggles tell them of a thing, it detects a satellite thing happening, there's hacking going on, the gambler's at it again, which I'm just glad that I finally have an easy name to remember that Goatee Man is, because
what was really annoying for me is earlier in the episode it made a point of telling me his name. You know, a couple of times they mentioned, you know, like 2 or 3 times in one scene. It was Stephen Sharp. And I learned it, and I was like, right, okay, good, I know that now. And then, like, 10 minutes later, they were like, it's fine, it's just the gambler. I'm like, oh, god damn it.
Yeah, gambler's way easy to remember, it's fine, he's a gambler.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this them going on their first mission, all in costume, all that stuff. Although not quite actual, there's a bit of a swerve. They think they're just going to go, oh, we're just going to go meet the gambler, he's just a hacker, nothing too dangerous. But the swerve is, of course, that they end up running into other characters that are interested in this episode, that are built up through the episode as well, before we meet them here. And that is Sportsmaster and Tigress, who are, of course, the parents of Artemis Croc, who was set up in the school as a student like an episode or two ago, and then we see her more over here.
Episode,
yeah, we see her more over here on the football team. So that's the gist of the episode in terms of the overall what's going on. And while there's still some nitpicks to be had, you know, I think if your complaints about the goggles being just kind of magic Wikipedia knowledge, kind of as a device, I feel like you're just gonna have to make your peace with that, because that's just going to be it forever.
I just want them to not overdo it, because I'm just cool it, you know.
I did see a comment on our last review comparing it to essentially like Midnight's thing is basically his version of Brother Eye, and I was like, not a bad comparison, I suppose. If you want to explain how it keeps updating.
Sure, but I mean, that's an actual big satellite, huge computer power. This is, I don't know, an AI and some goggles.
No, but I assume it connects to a satellite or something.
I mean, maybe. I have very little idea of what the
for the record,
of this thing is.
I never assumed that all of the tech was actually in the goggles. I assumed it was connecting to something.
I mean, it might well be. I don't know.
At the very least, there's a desktop tower somewhere that's doing some processing.
Who knows?
That'd be my guess.
It's the power of the cloud, Pete. Power of the cloud.
But don't start. Don't start with that 2013 circa Microsoft shilling. They spent so much time talking about the cloud, and no one uses the goddamn cloud. There's been no cloud just in the last 8 years. Anyway.
Hey. That is not true. There are at least 3 people playing Google Stadia.
So, anyway, what I was going to say is that this is maybe my favourite episode yet.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I had fun. I think it's it leans into the goofiness, even like a little bit much to where it was.
There's goofiness. Like I said, there's still nitpicks. The goggles are one. I think Rick is still a little bit too aggressive with his I was going to go punch it. Like, that was a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I'm still not big on either him or Beth after this episode.
But I thought, because now that things have been somewhat set up, I thought Courtney's interactions with everyone, now that they all seem to care about their roles or care about their costume, or having Yolanda like watch old Wildcat boxing matches, for example, things like that. Like her trying to go around them and try to and feeling bad that she can't just say, "Hey, I need the stuff back," and then them playing off each other. I felt like it felt like it was okay. We're in kind of a status quo now, and it feels like it kind of works. But the reason why I like the episode, that's not why I like this episode. Why I like this episode is that I think Tigress and Sportsmaster are both extremely fun. And not just in their fighting and costumes, but even before that, when they're just being shitty parents that are threatening the coach, I was into.
So over the top. Like, even compared to the other villains in this show.
Super comic booky. I think that's what I like about the villains in this show, is that while they're super like comic booky and lighthearted, at no point did I feel like they belong in the other CW shows. Like, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like, no, these are far more like confidently intentioned in what they are, as opposed to just being kind of shoddy writing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I thought the actors were well cast, especially Sportsmaster. He was cracking me up the way he was grinning. He was almost doing a, oh god, I've forgotten all the names, but the main bad guy in The Boys. He was almost verging on that at times, the way he was grinning at people.
Homelander. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it was almost doing Homelander.
There was a few times where I was like, he reminds me of someone with the grin, and that might be it.
Nah. So I thought their inclusion, the way they were like threatening the coach, and then just the sort of the gag of this is the third coach they've killed because they keep benching their daughter for being too aggressive. Because it's worth mentioning, Artemis turns around and punches the kid in the face, who was being a dick, don't get me wrong, but she just straight up punches him flat
That's
out.
still, not the right response.
No, it's not the right response. I get her frustration. And it's true to Artemis as a character. I'm not complaining here from a character standpoint.
What's really interesting is at this point early on, I think we spoke last week about how Artemis has a history of being both a villainous or a heroic character, depending on which interpretation. Early on, I felt, okay, we're really playing up the anger issues. We're seeing that she's a bit troubled, perhaps. I'm feeling that we're probably going the villainous route. But then we got the scene with her parents talking to her at home when they were going out, and I was like, oh no, she's going heroic.
I actually got heroic from the get-go, just because I feel like because they're playing up the anger, it's far more interesting for her to like swerve us and be like, I'm going to be on the hero side even though I'm an angry little shit.
More interesting, yes. I think I just didn't have enough faith in the show.
Sure.
In that all the other kids are just, oh look, they're the kids are villains and they're terrible. Look, they're the terrible people. I just assumed it was going to go that route with Artemis as well at this point of the episode.
So I liked everything with them, just sort of setting them up beforehand when they were just being parents, but obviously part of a supervillain team. But but then they show up in costume. The Justice Society get together in costume as well. They're thinking they're going to get the gambler, and it sort of plays it because he's listening to Kesha do his hacking. And then
I'm impressed you knew that was Kesha.
And then he hears a noise, and it turns out it's just his cat, because we think it's the JSA, right? But it's not. It's just his cat, and it's like a little swerve, and it's like no, the people actually at the server building where they are doing stuff. It's actually Sportsmaster and Tigress, and we have this face off. I think their costumes, the Tigress and Sportsmaster, that is, were just the right balance of functional but cheesy.
I can see that.
They look just a bit right. And I think why I like this so much is that obviously at this point I was in a pretty good mood because I thought they were pretty entertaining, and there's other things, I think, Courtney continues to be pretty good and so on. But I think the action here between the characters when they were fighting Tigress and Sportsmaster is easily my favourite of like the superheroic action stuff so far.
Yeah, I think especially we got to see a lot of the staff kind of being utilised with gymnastics in combat. Yeah, there
was a good moment where she did like a sort of slow motion backflip as the staff was kind of spinning as well in the opposite way, and it was like all colourful. I think what I really liked though was actually Sportsmaster using his baseball bat. I thought the way he was, there was even just before he started using it in the fight, there was a thing he did where he kind of like sort of threw it over his shoulder and then caught it as he was walking away, and I thought, oh, that was kind of slick. I like that.
Yeah. He was having fun with it, and that's Sportsmaster. Both of them were. I think the two of them, I think they were both fun to fight individually. The few moments we got of them fighting together, when they were side by side, playing off each other, like they're this couple who really know what they're doing. It was a lot of fun.
It made for a good 15 minutes of just constant smiling in my face because it was just fun moment after fun moment. I thought, and I think what I liked about it is that it felt different from, because it'd be very easy to just have like, okay, these are just human beings who are good at fighting, so it'd be very easy to just like, oh, it's a scene from Arrow, right? But the combat felt genuinely kind of unique. It felt like he was doing all these little stylish things. It felt a little bit more specific to his character, and I think that.
We do have to note some subpar effects work.
Oh yeah, when he was doing the baseballs, they looked crap. But I mean, the actual fighting looked great. Yeah, the actual fighting looked great. Them like the two squaring off against the four at the end, and it's like, okay, they're struggling a little bit, and there's that great moment where our man's got the car, and then like Sportsmaster's like, well, that's a shame. Now you're going to have the car crushing you, and then Courtney has to like block it with the staff. Like, that was fun stuff. And then it's kind of a nice popper moment at the end where Stripe shows up, and it's like, no, they've got and this was the shot from Crisis that they teased with them all standing together. But it was like, no, this was a perfect escalation. The fighting was good and fun and everything built, and it sold me on kind of the idea of the team. I mean, each person to varying degrees, admittedly, but
I think the team unit as a whole, I agree. I think Courtney and Yolanda are clearly the highlight of the four younger ones.
Yeah,
right
which
now.
by the way, like for all the sort of like worry or critiquing we had of like the Wildcat suit, actually in combat, having her like sort of like jump up and climb onto the walls and
Yeah, it was fun.
all that stuff was fun to watch.
Yeah. And I think it's that this is a blast of a sequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still not the best scene in the episode. That comes just after.
What was just after? Remind me.
The conversation between Courtney and Pat.
Oh yeah, this is pretty good actually. Yes, where Courtney learns a harsh lesson, where she realizes that everything Pat's been trying to do for her, she was trying to do for the team, and feels really ignored. Yes, this was Joe. This was proof to me. This was proof of concept why you cast these two actors, because this is exactly the sort of scene where if you had mediocre acting, it would completely not work and fall flat.
It would be cliched and terrible.
Yeah, but because they saw it was her, especially her selling this and being completely oblivious that she was doing the same thing to him. What made it beautifully perfect.
Like, caught on quite quickly what was going on, and what was the line? It was so it's like it goes in one ear and out the other, yeah. And she's like, exactly, and she's so in the moment. And honestly, this is a scene that I would give them as a screen test if I'm casting actors for these roles. This is what you give them.
No, I like that a lot as well. I also enjoyed the chocolate mountain, the candy volcano that erupted in chocolate sauce. I enjoyed that. It actually made me kind of feel bad for him a little bit because he tells his parents not to show up because this is what we went there. No one's parents are coming. And then we actually, because this is the first time I think in the entire show where we've cut to his scene where it's the point of it is him, where he's kind of the main focus. And we cut to this, this science fair, and like everyone else's parents are there, and he's just standing there on his own. And I'm like, oh, I actually feel kind of bad. But then Barbara shows up, and I think it's kind of weird that because Pat spends so much time with Courtney, because they've got this secret superhero team now, that Barbara and the kid are kind of starting to bond a little bit. And
yeah, I feel like that's gonna bubble over for a few more episodes, and then that's probably where he's going to get the pen and kind of get in on the team, so to speak, and so he can get back in the relationship with his dad. Probably will be part of it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I did like that bit at the start actually, where Pat comes in and sees the mountain, and he's like, "Is this breakfast? What the hell are you doing?" He's like, "A science fair. Got to have it ready by the end of third period." He's like, "Wait, how long have you known about this?" He's like, 3 weeks. He's like, 3 weeks? He's like, "Hey, I do my best work under pressure." I have never related more to a character in my life than that sentence right there.
I get it so bad. I have never once started a piece of work with more than like an hour spare than exactly what I need before the deadline hits.
I mean, there was a time when I'd have said it was always the night before, and that was true in high school. I think once I was in university, some projects took more time than that, so it had to be started earlier, but it was always just the right amount of time.
Yeah, if I knew my project was a 3-day project,
it was started 3 days before.
It was started 3 days before, and I would pull an all-nighter that final night to get it done, and never handed in anything late. Came out with pretty decent, grades overall.
Solid.
Not like top of the class, but perfectly respectable. Fine by me for the amount of, given that I'm like, no, I did this in 3 days before the end.
To translate it to American grades, solid B+.
Yeah, pretty much.
Solid B+.
I'm like, I deserve that. I don't deserve top of the class grades. I wasn't putting in there were people who were putting in work for weeks every night, and I'm like, I wasn't doing that.
To be fair, in high school, I literally, well, not in every subject, but there was a lot of classes where I would just do it the night before and get an A. Like that was common in high school.
I could get away with that in school.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about university level.
Which, to be fair, it's a it's a level up. It should be harder.
It absolutely should. And like I said, that there are people there putting in work every night for weeks and getting like top grades, and like fair play to them.
But that's kids in middle school. That's kids in basically what my second year of high school is age. In our system, more or less.
How old is he, roughly?
I don't know. I'm ballparking.
Yeah, I mean, how old would you say he is roughly?
He looks about 12 to me.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah. And yes, for people in the US who are listening to this going in high school, yes, we don't have middle school. We just have 2 longer ones. High school 6 years, just 5 or 6 years depending. So just go with it. Anyway.
Yeah.
So No, I thought that was really fun and relatable at the start because I sympathize way too much with this kid.
This is the most I have liked any kid character in anything in a long time. It feels very real, and I said that even with like things like Stranger Things, right, where it's all kids that are very relatable. This is managing to do a lot in very few scenes where I'm like, I get this kid.
I feel like there's a lot of common with Stranger Things here with this kid. The only difference is that this is a kid who's in the modern world and has modern technology and references, playing video games in a way that the kids in Stranger Things, obviously they play arcade games and shit, but
it's different to our experience.
So this is a lot more close to home. Although I feel like that attitude of doing the work the night before is probably just as prevalent in the 80s. But
I'm sure it was.
So no, I thought that stuff was fun. Like I say, my issues with the episode were mainly Rick's kind of like hot-headedness, which I get that they want to have that and they want to have him grow out of it. And hopefully, but because actually one of the sweet moments of the episode that I thought worked really well is that when she tries to like sort of take the stuff back and they say no, and then Rick's outside and Rick's got the book and he asks, Beth to look with the goggles to see if she can figure out the code of this journal that Rex had. And they basically all kind of start like talking about Pat and how Pat's like a bit of like, what does he even do? He's a bit of a loser. And there was kind of a sweet touch to this where Courtney starts sticking up for him and starts sort of trying to justify who Pat is and what he does and how important he is. And it was kind of like this thing where she's almost forced into this role of admitting all the reasons why she should treat him better. It was a nice little touch.
And you do have a nice payoff at the end where they admit, oh hey, maybe he's not so bad. Yeah, the rest of the kids.
Yeah, because they're looking up at this giant like mech suit and they're like, maybe we underestimated Pat a little bit.
On Rick's anger issues, I think they're frustrating enough now because they're kind of just a little bit whiny teenage, right? I think I'm concerned that I really hope we don't have to go through this kind of again with Artemis in the future.
I think so far nothing with her's given me a red flag. I feel like she's been very entertaining so far. I think the thing with Rick, which was also the problem with Beth to a point as well, is that they wanted to kind of rush, and even Yolanda, who we think is better, and there was good elements to her story. Some of it was still a little bit rushed in terms of getting to the point where she's in the suit. I think we were hoping that once they were a team and once they were all together, that a lot of the stuff would be less of an issue because that's what they were rushing to. And I think I definitely got the impression that was at least somewhat true in this episode because they're using stuff to set up, even though they rushed elements of it. Like, there's a moment with Beth where she's arguing why she doesn't want to give the goggles back, and she says something about how Chuck's like her friend now, and it was really sort of like kind of sad and pathetic again. But it felt very true to what they'd set up with her with all the stuff with her parents, and it was like, say what you want about her character, they're actually like continuing the through line and paying it off in a natural way that actually makes sense.
It's consistent. I'll give it that. Doesn't help that I don't really like what it's doing. Like I say, it's kind of, you look at it and be like, this is a bit sad and pathetic and whatnot. And I feel like I'm supposed to feel sorry for her, but I'm just kind of irritated by it. But it's consistent. I will give it that.
I have more of a heart than you. I was a bit more feeling sorry for her here, but I mean, that's whatever. I think the problem with Beth, perhaps, and I'm wondering how they'll sort this out, is that once they're actually in the situation where there's a couple of supervillains in front of them, and they kind of pair off, to have two 2-on-1 fights, but Beth goes with Yolanda, to Wildcat and Midnight, and they take on Tigress, and it's all just Wildcat. The only contribution that Beth has in the fight is that she's like, okay, Yolanda's losing. Losing. What can I do? Goggles. It's there's a fire extinguisher there, and she sort of uses that to like give her like a moment of distraction to help her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we're going to have to sort of have some sort of purpose for her in a fight, because as of right now, the show doesn't give her any fighting abilities or advantages. It just it's all information based. Essentially, it's like the person at the computer just being on the field with the team,
which is a massive liability, right?
Yeah, which is kind of a weird take.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're going to get her with some gadgets or something that she can use at some point. But
that would make sense. I think I can kind of describe my feeling of how it is. You know how some people feel with really cringy comedy, like like early Michael Scott in The Office, where it's like uncomfortably cringy.
Okay.
And some people hate it. They just hate feeling like it's uncomfortable and they don't find it funny. I kind of feel that with Beth here, where I get what they're going for. I get what they're supposed to be making me feel with the sympathy, but I just feel like uncomfortable instead.
It's entirely possible that, much like Michael Scott in The Office, that will naturally improve, and
I hope so.
they'll still kind of get what they were going for in the first place, but it'll work better and you'll care more as time goes on.
Yeah.
They'll find enough of a heart there that you'll sort of attach to it.
Because, like I say, with Manga Sky, it definitely took probably a season or two for it to get out of that particular groove where, and I know for some people that was just too much and they just couldn't cope with it.
Yeah. So obviously the Injustice stuff. Obviously, Icicle's got the team. They're still trying to build their thing. They need Brainwave for it, but they are aware of this team at the end. They're like, okay, there's a Justice Society of some kind. Let's find out who they are. That's kind of the ending cliffhanger, as it were. But no, I really enjoyed this episode. And again, it's not flawless by any means. It's still got these little things, with some specific characters specifically. But I feel like this episode was kind of really starting to deliver what I think it's supposed to be. So if we can keep this up, if it can hit more fights like it did with the big villain fight in this episode, because I do appreciate that it wasn't like if we're getting fights every episode. I appreciate that it felt really special because we'd went a few without a big superhero fight. So this felt notable because of that.
It's something that I didn't really notice until I was in the fight. Until I was watching it, I'm like, we haven't actually done anything like this in a while.
I would rather have 4 of these per season that are of this quality than have just a generic one every episode.
Because that is the thing with the CW shows. Even in seasons that we liked at the time, right? On all of these shows across the board, you got one of these fights every episode.
Yeah. And
not necessarily of this quality. Occasionally they were good, to be fair to them. And usually not of this length, I would say. But you would always get something.
Yeah. I honestly think it's just better to have good character stuff in between for a few episodes and then really have like a fight that's worth having, that's impressive and exciting, and something that because I generally felt excited during this fight. I thought it was really fun and I was really into it. And when we look at the CW shows, out of like I never watched the last couple episodes of Arrow, but out of the almost full 8 seasons of Arrow that I watched, there was only maybe like a handful of fights in all those seasons that I actually genuinely thought were fun fights. For the most part, they're just the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I'd say there's probably 5 or 6 maybe that are like memorable enough that I go, oh, that was kind of fun.
And it's notable though, the couple that I did like in that tended to be because of the filmmaking, and obviously the filmmaking is a factor here, but there were never like superhero fights in the same way that this was, where there was like powers involved. There was this felt more to me like how every so often on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. they'll really make good use of like Sky's powers in a fight.
There was a moment where Rick was fighting Sportsmaster. It was outside by the cars, and they like punched and went upwards, and it kind of slowed down a touch as like in midair, and that really reminded me of what they do with like Quake on that show.
Yeah. So if they can give me this like every 3 or 4 episodes, I am like, because it'll feel more special, it'll feel more gets built up, and it's not just the same thing. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a smart tactic to use, so it's not just repetitious, so it doesn't just get old. And because that's something even comic books can suffer from sometimes, is that'll feel too formulaic, and I appreciate that this didn't.
Yeah, we obviously review a lot of comics on our show, and we often we'll talk about it's a fight issue, and sometimes they're elevated by good art, which in this case translates to good direction and style. But other times, it's just a fight issue. It's fine, and that's a feeling that is normal in comics. And again, like in the CW shows, for example, like I mean, it's a fight. It's fine, but it's just serving its point.
Yeah. This was better than like 99% of the fights that were in any of those CW shows. Obviously, there was the odd standout, but this was better than the typical quality of them by a great margin. So, and it also served a purpose. It wasn't just fun for the sake of being fun. It served a purpose in the context of the show because it sold me on the team. It sold me on me being excited and me wanting to see this team function as a unit. Going for and learning to be better, because if this is how good Courtney is with the staff right now, what is she after she has a good bit of experience? What is she with, and so on.
I think it was important for this fight to be as strong as it was on a on a structural level for us as the audience, in that this is the one that has to show us what the team can do as a whole rather than individual one-on-one fights. And
the fact that they were kind of like, I mean, they might have won. There was kind of at that point before Stripe showed up where maybe they can still pull out a victory here, 4-on-2. I mean, well, it's really 3-on-2. Midnight wasn't really exactly doing a whole lot, but like the fact that they were holding their own well enough, but still maybe needed this to help from Stripe. The fact that by the time we get to the end of the season, potentially we have a much bigger team to fight because we'll have the whole Injustice Society, right? So it can up the stakes. So even if our characters get better at it, even if our man is able to keep control in a fight and uses superpowers effectively, even if Yolanda gets better at one-on-one combat, the fact that they'll have more to fight at the end means that it'll then be them. They'll still be the underdogs, even though they'll be much better at it. But it'll make for even better scenes potentially.
Yeah, and I can see things like, Beth learning to be more of the tactician, maybe in the field still, but like Rick's not the brightest bulb, is he? Let's be honest.
No.
Maybe some actual direction could do him some good in a fight.
Yeah, maybe she'll start calling the plays a little bit. Maybe she'll start strategizing. That would be valuable. That would make sense. And we're expecting the old Thunder pen to come into it.
Yeah, that should be fun. I think what I need from Beth, and I'm saying this now because I'm noticing, I need to see what she brings to the character as Midnight rather than just the goggles. And the same goes for Rick as well, I think. But Yolanda kind of, in her episode that she had, kind of showed what she brought to it beyond just the costume.
Yeah.
Whereas the other two, I think, have yet to prove that.
Yeah, and it was a bit on the nose with our dialogue this episode, but I do think there was something to be said about Yolanda's. She's talking about how this is Ted Grant's last fight, and he was accused of cheating, and he proved that he didn't, but his reputation was already ruined. But the whole point of the fight was that he could come back. He could always come back. And her whole thing is that she is trying to come back in the eye of public perception. So it was a bit on the nose the way she phrased it. She made it really sort of blunt the way she said it, but I kind of appreciated the sentiment anyway, because it kind of does fit into her will, and maybe the idea of making Wildcat a woman and sort of maybe tackling the injustice that she faces is a nice way of spinning that character into a modern setting and giving it something else to stand for beyond just being a superhero and doing the right thing. There's a more specific take on it. So no, I think that's interesting. So yeah, I can't wait till Artemis potentially is on the team, and I don't know if she's actually into archery yet, but
I suspect Artemis will be a season 2 thing for the most part.
Right, yeah, I could see that too. I mean, also again they were talking about that Green Lantern, and Pat points out, I mean, luckily it's not, it won't work without the ring, and I'm like, yeah, where's the ring? Let's start talking about this ring, Pat. Where is it?
They're really playing it up like it's going to be a thing on this show, aren't they? And that's surprising.
Yeah, honestly, between the pen and the ring, I'm kind of like, no, I think everything's a fair game at some point. Like, I think we're eventually going to have a speedster. We're going to have someone wear that goddamn helmet at some point. I just don't know when. And maybe we'll actually get that legacy thing where somehow a couple of them will come back. Maybe it will be Alan and Jay. Maybe we'll actually get Alan and Jay as the two older members with Pat, with the younger members.
I'd be totally down for that.
Of course you would be, and because we know they intentionally didn't show us those faces yet.
They clearly have plans for the future, or more accurately, I suppose, they wanted to keep the options open for any plans they might have at some point.
Hey, Johns plays the long game. He's got rough plans.
I'm sure he does.
They might change, they may alter, but I guarantee you, I think John started this show with a rough 5-season plan in his head.
I think one of John's biggest problems as a writer in general is he overplans, in that he goes, okay, I've got an idea for something, and we'll get there. But then he gets distracted by things along the way, even within the same story, with the same characters. He'll be like, oh, I could do this, and oh, I can do that. And then it's 4 years late until he finally remembers, oh yeah, I teased that thing, didn't I? Let's get back to that.
Yes. Well, I mean, TV shows are not like comics in that you can't change them as quickly and readily. A comic script, because after that, there's less steps to have it be finished, so it inherently has a lot more free reign to it, right? Yes. Whereas a TV show, you have to lock in, there's all these other elements, there's hundreds of people working on it. It's not the same thing.
The overall arc of the season, not the episodes themselves, but the overall arc is kind of written as they go into the writer's room properly. Yeah. So that's kind of locked in from the start.
I think he has to be reined in that sense from what he does with comics, and that's probably not a bad thing. But I definitely felt Johnsy aspects in this episode. And if they can keep nailing it, if they can keep going down that path, and if they can keep improving, be that show that just keeps getting better. Be that show that, by the time we get to the end of season 2, we're like, you know what, that actually is starting to feel like something special.
I'm honestly quite pleasantly surprised with this, and it's. I know, obviously, at this point we're 6 episodes in, and we're quite positive. But I mean, in that DC Universe as a service has been hit or miss, but I feel like when it hits, it really hits. Like Doom Patrol is fantastic. The Harley Quinn show is fantastic, and this
allegedly.
is getting. It is. I promise
allegedly,
you,
it's allegedly fantastic. I cannot condone it because I've not seen it, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. It's maybe my favorite thing on the service. That's how good it is. And this, I don't think, is as good as those two things, but it's well into the sphere of this justifies its existence, right? Whereas Titans is something, and Swamp Thing was just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But so overall, I'm quite happy with the shape of the service in terms of the content it's actually producing. Whether or not it has any longevity of it in itself is another question.
You meant the show as a whole. That's not what I thought you meant at first. I thought you meant this episode specifically because you weren't as hot in the last couple. But
no, I mean, I just mean the show as a whole. We've seen like half the season now. I've kind of got an idea of, okay, this is the feeling, and overall, I'm quite pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So no, I think it felt like a more confident episode as well. It felt like it wasn't. I didn't feel the forced writing as much. Again, yeah, Rick's a bit over the top, and that's a little bit forced, but I didn't feel as many contrivances in the story to get us where we need to get by the end of the episode. It felt a bit more natural.
It was a little bit simpler, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The biggest contrivance is still the goggles, just being like, hey, there's something going on there, and sure, whatever. But ultimately, the plot was quite simple, and that worked in his favor. And I think the word used was confident. And I think if you're going to do goofy, and let's face it, was relatively speaking goofy, Sportsmaster and Tigress, you have to be confident. Otherwise, it will just be laughably bad.
Yeah, but it didn't come off as laughable, or it didn't even come off as goofy necessarily. Even though technically it is, it came off as fun.
If you step back and look at it, it is goofy, but but because they do it with confidence, it doesn't come across as that when you're watching it. Yeah,
the casting was actually really good on this too. I think for the most part, the villains on this show are pretty good.
Honestly, like even the Gambler is growing on me. Just with his southern drawl, just kind of playing. Oh yeah, it up.
I like his thing as well. I actually really loved it when he goes to talk to Sportsmaster and Tigress. He drops what he's eating on the ground, even though he's a foot away from a bin.
And like they call him out on it as well after. Like, no, put that shit in the bin.
Yeah, no, I enjoy just how it's just this is how evil he is. He's a foot away from the bin, and he's the opposite of the mayor from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who would still do all those things correctly despite the fact that he's an evil monster. He's the opposite of that.
I mean, spoilers.
It's not a spoiler. He's always evil. He's a villain from the second. The first time they even utter the word mayor before you even meet him is very clear that he's a villain.
I know. I'm just there are people who haven't seen this show. I don't know why they're watching Stargirl at this point, given that you should probably at that point go and watch Buffy, which is a clear inspiration.
Yeah, go watch Buffy. Buffy's a masterpiece. But don't watch the garbage HD version. It's not been remastered properly. Watch the SD version.
Honestly, so annoying that put me off a rewatch recently, just because it became available on a service. I was like, oh, I could watch this again, and no, I'll have to wait. I mean, I'll watch it again at some point.
Yep. So there you go. That is episode 6 of Stargirl. I almost said JSA there because honestly, it's kind of going for a young JSA vibe more than it is directly Stargirl. But whatever. I mean, the name's not that important. So there we go. That is episode 6, and I would argue it's the best. Maybe the best one yet. It's definitely up there with the other best ones, which would be the first 3, basically.
I'd say it's on par with those. I don't know if it's necessarily the best. I think it is worth noting though, this is the shortest episode yet, and this one will not have had to cut anything for the CW given its length.
No. And if it does, it'll be like 10 seconds somewhere. Like it's nothing noticeable.
There'll be like nothing because this was 41 minutes or something.
Yeah. So yeah, which is fine. I don't want them adding stuff just for the sake of saying we've got more either. So, and
No, just make it feel like this felt properly paced.
Yeah.
Unlike, I think there was some, the last couple felt a little bit off for me in the pacing, but the first three were, or at least the first two definitely were longer, and those felt properly paced as well. So I'm glad that it is just, in this case at least, it felt like the correct amount.
Yeah, but it's also true that much like a network show, as we're saying, this feels more like a traditional network show in a lot of ways, is that it won't be as consistent as a cable show where it's like, super serialized. Network shows, including great ones like Buffy, including stuff like Star Trek, it's up and down. You get episodes that aren't as good.
They've all got some shit episodes, haven't they?
Yeah. And hey, this one's not had oh god, Code of Silence, was that the episode? Code of Honor. That's the Star Trek episode I'm thinking of.
Okay, yeah.
With Tasha Yar and the Jungle Gym.
I was wondering which specific bad example you were searching for.
Yes. So there you go. That is episode 6 of Stargirl. Let us know what you thought of that one in the comments. Like as well on YouTube. Liking is really important. It helps YouTube figure out which videos it should recommend out to other people, and of course it helps us out if you do that, so please do. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month, and maybe one day find a cure for Connor's chronic hiccups. And you can get some bonuses for your trouble if you go do that, so go and have a look. Otherwise, get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates, and that is pretty much us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. What do I usually say at the end of this? Oh yeah, have you got any vanilla?